good morning, happy Friday, and welcome back to the Find Your Place podcast, where we talk all things about finding your place in the world and also in real estate. Today, we actually decided to talk about something that's not real estate related. And with all of the news coming out with certain celebrities that have been going through a lot of things, and as a result, leading to some other really devastating things, Bianca and I thought that we would come together today to talk about mental health and, I guess more specifically, mental well-being. How can we encourage that? How can we support the people around us, our communities, in order to make sure that, devastating things don't happen? And, I myself will be talking about personal experiences as well. And I think we should also present this in a way where we talk about the type of world that we live in this Western world, all these expectations, things that are expected of us, things that happen, maybe things that we're lacking that lead us to, move forward with certain decisions, or even things that we're seeing in the media that's being pushed by the government that okays certain behaviors and things that we do. So, I thought we would jump in and perhaps, I have a question for you. And this is something that actually runs through my mind very often. Maybe it's because we're living in a world where things are just in front of us all the time. And I'm talking about the media side of things. So we're being bombarded with a lot of information. But more and more we're hearing about people dealing with anxiety, dealing with depression, and then, hearing how those things really take someone's life. And so my question is, why does it seem that we're suffering more now than ever in regards to mental health and all of this stuff?
That is such a good question. Oh man. Okay. So obviously the most obvious thing right now is looking at our last few years, right? We have this pandemic that happened. We have all these people that were locked down, and we had a lot of mental health issues surface more than ever, right? We had to relearn so many things about ourselves, about our partners. For me, there's a positive and a negative about the pandemic. I also got really, really down during that time. But because I saw what was happening in the world, it was the first time that I ever came to a realization that true evil exists. And I've always been kind of like gray area about that. So balance, good needs bad needs good. And, there's no separation between them, and blah, 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 enlightenment and all the new age stuff. And going through the lockdowns and going through, the forced nature of it all. It was like the devil revealed himself so clearly that I got to recognize what evil was. And through that recognizing, I was able to discover that, wow, if the devil exists, because he does, what an opportunity we got to be able to see truly. And what we should talk about later is how in media, we are always shown that the devil is exactly what we're talking about, which is balance. If you look at the show Lucifer, he's kind of like the good guy, but kind of like the bad guy. And so we're starting to remove what it looks like to be evil, and we're starting to blur the lines of evil, of darkness. And now we can't even tell what's good and what's wrong and what's right. And so why is there so much suffering? Because we're blurring the lines of what is right, moral, what is wrong, what is dark, what is light. And that's my answer, I think.
So, you just given the example of Lucifer. No, that's okay. Are there any other things that come to mind when you think of that blurred space?
The blurred space of okay, so I see it a lot of media, right? I see it a lot in our television shows, a lot of the sci-fi shows, a lot of, it's always, because it speaks to a human part of us. A human part of us is we are really broken, and we do have the choice between making the wrong choice, which is something that is a selfish choice, or something that is self-preservation. So when they present to you someone who is bad by nature, but tries to make good choices, but doesn't,
right?
And then they also present a lot of these TV shows these characters as people who believe that they're doing something right for society. So like if you look at Dexter, what was it? What was Dexter? It was
I don't watch TV shows in so long.
man. Okay. So Dexter was a serial killer, but he was also a police officer, I think, or a detective. Point is, he went off and like murdered people who were hurting people. Okay. And so like this TV show was like, it makes you root for the guy who's doing the murdering because he has a reason for it.
Right.
So maybe the problem is that we're rooting for the people that are wanting to cause us harm because we've learned to hate ourselves and other people so much. Mm-hmm. And this is another thing, right? We have quite literally been shown so many ways in which we should hate ourselves, right? Like all of these, even the shows, right? They all show the flaw of human beings. Mm-hmm. And now we have all of this, like any type of push that we have in the media that's propaganda, like for right now when we're talking about not saying climate change is propaganda, just saying that the images and the things that they use, they make you want to hate humanity, right? Because like, look what we're doing to the planet. Right. If humans didn't exist, like the most nihilist, if humans didn't exist, we'd just be so much better off. Would we? You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, we're constantly being shown how disgusting and vile we are as people. And we're starting to internalize that. And there's so much shame and guilt and darkness that comes with that it's literally shaping our reality and just humanity. It's shaping us. And we're starting to forget what it is to be good and to make good choices and to see hope, to feel hope. Yeah.
You just said all those words, shame, guilt, all that. And I thought of this morning's call because
the 5 a.m. call.
Yeah, we were talking about the different frequencies. Let me just pull this up. And as soon as you said that, I'm like, those are the worst frequencies that we can possibly be on. I don't know if anyone can see his face showed on the camera, but if anyone's interested, I can send you what this is. But
we can just send it to Luke and he can pop it up on the screen.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's do that. We were just talking about the different types of frequencies and like the levels of consciousness that we have. And, enlightenment and peace and joy and love are at the top there. But you have shame is all the way at the bottom. Guilt, apathy, grief, fear, those are all at the bottom. So you can only imagine when someone is on a continuous cycle of feeling those feelings, it's inevitable that that person is going to be in a very, very dark hole. And when you're around people and you're around spaces and you're around content that is all in line with that, how the heck do you get out of that?
Exactly.
Right. And so I think we as humans, we are naturally drawn to things that reinforce the ideas that we already have.
Yeah.
Right.
So now we're talking obviously perception and like how we take in information and then what we perceive that information to be. I think the first step for us individually is to look around and to question, to just have one simple question. And the question is this true? And like, this is like the most simplest sounding thing in the world. But whenever a thought comes up or whenever even seeing something on television, and it's insane how television shapes us and media and songs and music.
Oh yeah.
And so it's like, I know that when we're watching TV, we get enveloped in the show, we get enveloped in the storyline. We don't realize how deeply embedded those storylines get into, and like they probably like get inside of us and start like forming parts of us. And it's important to just keep looking at it and go, okay, sorry, I'm hearing sounds. I got distracted.
It's okay.
It's important to look at all of these shows that you're watching, these movies, these like superheroes / like, by the way, superheroes are not what they used to be. Is this not?
Yeah, I think that's changed a lot too.
It's changing. Now it's all about like all of these bad qualities that they have. And sure, they have to make choices that are very difficult. And it does make people question, like we have, like, it's a philosophical question, right? Like they're like, which evil would you choose if you had to choose an evil?
Right.
And it's constantly making you do that. Mm-hmm. So the question always is, when you're looking at this content, to just take a moment and go, is this true? Right? So whatever, somebody presents, whatever storyline they present, is this true? Is this like, if they say, these people are blank, is this true? Is it objectively true?
Right. Keyword objectively true.
Yeah. is it ultimate truth?
Yes.
That's the question.
I guess that makes me think, how do we ever know if something is ultimate truth? Like we can go to science and stuff.
But the whole thing is that you can realize when you look at all of these situations that you can't. And so therefore you can't possibly know that it's true. And all you need is that you know that it cannot just, it's possible that it's not true.
Right.
Like, you know, as long as you know that there's a possibility that it's not true, you can jump out of that belief system.
I actually think that's key when we're talking about belief systems, because when you are open to potentially altering it in some capacity, then you are open to receiving other sources of information, right? Because I feel like when people are very stuck on their own way of thinking, it's sometimes very difficult to accept any other way, right? Because they believe that that's their truth and that's the only truth.
Yeah. So, okay. What I hear is like, I hear the woke spiritual warriors being like, this is my truth. Okay. It doesn't have to be your truth. It's just my truth. That's exactly how they sound to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, okay. That's your truth. Now the question is, do we have to also make it our truth? Right?
Yeah,
like, do we have the right to be able to each individually have our own truths? Right? Because I find that the people who say that a lot, don't agree with you having your truth. Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Isn't that so ironic?
It's interesting.
But yeah, and on the topic of depression and isolation, the thing is that it takes one thought to, so if you look at, there's a bunch of TED Talks on depression and its roots and stuff outside of the chemical nature of it, if there's like biology involved. But one of the things that causes depression to get worse is isolation. That is the biggest. If you can just find a way to get out of the house and to go be with people somewhere, which is it's the hardest thing to do when you're depressed.
Funny enough, because when you look at our prison systems and the way that they've been created, like the goal is to isolate. And I'm someone who studied criminology in my undergraduate degree.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why I was so turned off by that whole system, was like, we are not supporting or helping these people in any kind of way to heal. There's no rehabilitation. How do you go and isolate? I've got a lot to say about this, but I would agree with you. The reason I bring this up is isolation, I think, literally will put us in this corner.
It will kill parts of us.
A point where, like you're dying slowly on the inside.
Yeah.
Right. And if you look at what happened during COVID, I'm so thankful that I was able to spend that time with my parents, but that's one of me. And there's so many other people who did not have that opportunity.
Yep.
And you would see how, certain groups of people were thriving and others were literally not.
Yep.
You can't go anywhere. You can't do anything. I will FaceTime people and call them because that's me, but some people don't have my personality. So imagine someone who doesn't do those things.
Yep.
They're literally boxed in with their own thoughts in their 600 square foot
condo. And then what they're doing is they're putting on Netflix. They're watching these TV shows that are super, super addictive and dark. And so now they're feeding their subconscious, not only with their own thoughts of isolation and loneliness, but they're getting a secondary thing to brainwash it into them. And then they, maybe they put on some music, and maybe that music is also very, very dark. And this is why, and I'm going to be like pretty deep with this stuff, but this is why when I saw the evil in the world, and by now, like if at this point, if you don't see what was happening with the whole lockdown situation, there isn't even an argument to have anymore. So if you don't see it, you don't see it.
That's population control?
No, I wouldn't say population control. That's like, I'm sure that's a worldwide agenda, but I don't think that was specific to that. I think that was specific to health and to the absolute limiting and the destruction of all freedom of choice. That was just the beginning of the loss of freedom of choice to like really expedite that right being removed, because it's gonna, and then what's so funny? There's two books that like from the past that we used to learn in high school, 1984, and then A Brave New World.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of these?
A Brave New World. No, I didn't read any of them. Brave New World I have heard of.
So 1984 is about a really dystopian future where the government's seeing everything that you do, and you're not allowed to write, you're not allowed to read, you're not, like, all the books have been burned, so all knowledge has been taken away, and pretty much your neighbors would tell on you, and like it's like you have to you're a cog in the machine, and it's like a propaganda state and all this stuff. Whereas Brave New World, there is no government, and the government doesn't need to do anything because they've reached a place in society where they police themselves.
Yeah. I think I've heard of this book.
Right.
For
So
sure.
like, you know, when the crazy conspiracists say like they're trying to remove your freedom of like your rights, to be careful with that. And then people are like, oh, you guys are such crazy conspiracy theorists.
Mm-hmm.
It's because the way that they're removing our rights is in the utopian version of Brave New World, which is they're making you believe that this is what you want and that you're okay with it.
Right.
And that it's the right thing and that whatever, and that you're perfectly free. They're making you believe you're perfectly free. And so that's why it's so hard to see. But yeah, that was a lot.
I love that you mentioned books because I think there's so much information in them far beyond just the information received. If you can read between the lines and you can make the connections like we used to in school, there's so much out there that literally already has told us what our world's going to look like. And I mean, you read the Bible, so that all that I'm sure is already in there too.
And this is the thing, right? When I discovered that, when I looked around and I saw the absolute evil that was happening, I wouldn't have found God if COVID didn't happen. Like I know that sounds like I actually wouldn't have run.
It's a lot of people.
I ran to God when I saw the absolute evil that this thing was, whatever this this permeated society and the world, and it literally like it put the world in this chokehold, and just it was so eye-opening for me. And yeah, once I started getting past all of my own brainwashing about the Bible being an old book filled of allegories and stories, and it's just, it's just like a book, whatever. When I started reading it, it is a very supernatural thing, and all of this, everything is in there. Like, it's all in there, and you can see clearly. Maybe it's just because it's a timeless book, and this is what happens with society, maybe. But it looks like what's happening at the end of that book is starting to happen here. So I keep urging people constantly to just, like, whatever preconceptions that you have, and maybe you could definitely dislike the institution of religion, and that's okay, because human beings have ruled institutions, and whenever you put a human being anywhere, they're gonna mess things up. Destroy it. But that book is there's been people out there who have created beautiful pieces of art. Like, we think of Beethoven or Mozart, and we think of how he was able to make these sounds come out of his fingertips, right? There was something that flowed through him. He was in a state of flow, right? And so whoever wrote those books in the Bible were in a state of flow. They were getting divine guidance. Like, this was not this.
Just like someone who sat down and decided to write. Yeah,
exactly. So when people say, I'm not gonna read that because it's written by man, and man is flawed. It's kind of like saying, like, well, first of all, how many things do you read by man? You read like magazines, you read books.
You're taught.
You're constantly reading. Yeah, everything is by man.
Yeah.
First of all, but it's like kind of saying, I'm not going to listen to Mozart or Beethoven, because it's like there's a difference there between those two artists and the majority of symphonies and all this other stuff. I urge people to really look in their Bibles, because that's where, for me, when we're talking about depression, I think that God is the cure for depression. And I know that might sound, I swear to you that if I was listening to this podcast 5 years ago,
you'd be like,
I would turn it off so quick.
Yeah, you'd be so turned off by it.
And it's so crazy that part of me existed at some point in time where I was just like rolling my eyes. I genuinely thought I knew better, and I knew a lot. Like I've been on this like mission to like learn everything in the world and get enlightenment and do every modality and do every hallucinogenic and like find the ultimate truth. And so like to be here talking about this is like, it's like night and day. It's a true miracle. It's a true transformation that I can't even believe happened. So
and I've seen before my eyes. I
yeah, you watched it. You
I've
watched it
literally
happen.
watched it. That's a beautiful thing.
So yeah, I think that the cure is turning to faith, because faith is faith, because faith is going to show you what hope is. And once you can take hope and pour it into people again, that's when we can escape all of this crazy stuff that's happening
At our fingertips.
and see. And this is why, like, think about, like, when I think about how repulsed I was about the Bible and God back, 2, 3, 4 years ago, repulsed, like angry about it,
Resistant too, probably.
resistant, but like in a way that was irrational.
Yeah.
So you have to question whenever somebody brings up Bible, God, or all this other stuff, Christianity, Jesus, if there's something inside of you that contorts. It's almost like, and hey, if you want to refer back to your Exorcist movies, you can, because that's what's happening inside of you. There's something that's inside, and spiritual wars are real. Like, there are demons. They do exist. They walk amongst us. They are attacking human beings and minds and stuff like this. So, what was I saying?
So having faith.
We're talking about having faith.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Yes.
I trailed off.
No, that's okay.
So because these demons exist and stuff like this, it's like you might not know that you have a stronghold, something that's inside of you that's probably not even you, that's probably taken from maybe a sexual partner you've been with, a traumatic thing that happened to you. That is the thing that causes a nick in a sort of, like, if we're going to talk about, if I can talk in like the spiritual words that other people use in the new age, is like your aura, like something like splits inside that lets something evil in, and you don't even know you have it, whether all of a sudden something bad happened to you and now you have super crazy anger issues. You went through a situation and now you have like extreme insecurity issues. All of these things, a lot of the time that's not who you are. That's not who you are at your core. Depression is not who you are at your core. Suicide is not who you are at your core. And life is who you are at your core. So I think that the answer to all of this is, and it sounds simple, and it really is going back to faith, going back to God, going back to reading this word and pouring it back into ourselves, so that when we see the dark stuff, we can see that that's dark, and there is a line, and I can be on this other side. Right. Yeah.
So it makes me think, because I spoke to a really good friend of mine, David, maybe 2 months ago. We were talking about the real estate market. We were just talking about life, how things are changing. And I asked him, I said, how do you always remain, like, if you meet him, his energy is so pure, so serene, so calm, always.
Yeah.
Despite what's happening in the world. It's actually quite beautiful to have someone like that in your space.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, David, how do you always remain so calm? Like, how do you not get, I guess, what's the word called? When you get
caught
up in everything that's happening, like discouraged, back to last week's episode. He goes, literally his simple response was, and this is right even before you said the word faith, but his response was, because I have faith.
Right.
That was literally no explanation
By
needed.
faith, we can really change the world.
Yeah. And
everything's trying to
remove
you
that from
So if we could just see that, if we can just remember that goodness exists and that an ultimate good exists, something that's better than we could ever be.
Right.
Just because and we talk about shame and guilt, right? So when we have shame and guilt about ourselves, we have this sort of hatred towards ourselves for it. Like, I hate myself for the way that I feel.
Of us.
Yeah. And so when you have that, you can't possibly understand that you're loved, right? Because you hate yourself so much. And this is why, like, the whole self-love agenda, that's not agenda, self-love, what's it called? Personal development genre space is so popular, right? Because it's true. Once you do love yourself, you're going to be able to understand that there's, like, however much you love yourself, or you love your kid, or you love your partner, something out there loves you way more than that. And it's unfathomable.
Yeah.
And once you discover it, it's like life-changing.
Beautiful. And you did talk about that briefly last week too. So you mentioned the word society.
Yeah.
And I think our society, and in particular, the Western world that we live in. I mean, I can only speak on really the Western world because I haven't lived anywhere else. I mean, I lived in Switzerland for 6 months, but I think the way our society has been constructed has created this whole idea of being in a rat race, whether or not we want to believe it. I think a lot of us are stuck in this rat race. We don't even realize that we're in it because we're like robots and we live our lives like a day to day. Every day is the same in order to pay your bills, in order to be able to satisfy X, Y person's needs. And I think that has been so detrimental to who we are, our souls even on the inside. Like I feel it much deeper. And this is why when I speak to people and they're always like, what are you trying to find? Or like, where are you trying to go? And I'm like, I just don't feel entirely happy, you know? And so I was listening to podcasts about our nervous system and how great of an indicator that is to us that something is up and we're not aligned. And like you said, something goes and cracks, if we're going to use the new age terminology, or our, whatever it is, our soul, something is not right. But what we fail to do is actually listen to that, tune into it, and take care of it. Because we're stuck in this rat race, it's so difficult to give yourself the time, and we go and give it to everyone else. And so it makes me think, and there's such a great example used where she was saying, like, say for example, it's October and you feel overwhelmed, you're stressed, you're overworked, you're burnt out. This is when all your negative feelings start to come. I hate myself. I don't have enough time to take care of myself. My hair looks ugly. My nails look ugly. I'm fat. I don't go to the gym. I don't have enough time, but I need to do X, Y, and Z. So you get into this really dark space, but then you go, I'll give an example of like a teacher, for example. You have only March break is coming up. Or actually, no, let's do the holidays.
Oh, I know what you're saying.
So you push it and you postpone it because you have priorities, but you're literally rejecting and resisting that one thing that's telling you like, I need you now. And so a lot of our society is just living in that kind of space. And I feel like I've been in that before. That's why I went to go seek something else, because I feel on the inside what's going on. And then when I'm in nature, all of a sudden I feel much lighter. I'm like, when I'm standing with my naked feet on the ground, I feel a lot more connected. I feel grounded. And I wonder, is our society always going to be like this? Or is there going to be a point where it's going to be so terribly bad that something's going to, I don't know. These are things that I think about.
Well, we have to look at where it's headed, right? Like while we have a lot of good things happening, we have a lot of very questionable, strange things that are happening. Oh boy. We didn't actually get to talk about the crazy campaign they have on.
No, we can still talk about it.
Can we talk about it?
Yeah,
because when we look at where it's heading, we need to stop it. We need to look at it and go, okay, we get it that the lines are blurred between right and wrong, but we need to just draw them and take a minute. Like, let's just draw the lines before we decide to cross them. In Canada, we have a assisted suicide program. And
Bianca showed me this today. I had no idea this was even a thing.
And it's not just that it's assisted suicide for people who are terminally ill, because that's what it was, but they're progressively changing it. Last year, they changed it to not being terminally. You don't have to be terminally ill to end your life.
What does terminally ill
so
mean?
Like having a cancer that's gotten so bad that there's nothing they can do, right? But now, last year, they changed it. And for instance, this gentleman who he's 61 years old, a bunch of suicide attempts, and he was hospitalized about it, and then he wanted to die, so he applied to be euthanized, and he wrote on his application hearing loss. And he How do
you know this information?
It's you can go on to, it's called AP News. It's disturbing experts troubled by Canada's euthanasia laws, and this was in August.
Who's the source? Can I see it?
The article.
But what's AP News?
It's just a news site. But you can look it up. You can verify that this gentleman, I don't know.
Okay.
But this gentleman, you can look him up specifically because his family was in the news saying like they basically killed our father, our brother, or whatever. Like this was not, where is it? So his brother Gary says Alan was basically put to death. right? So there's more articles on the family.
He
applied and he wrote hearing loss. So now we're having, and we're going to cut here and we're going to quickly show you the Canadian advertisement commercial for assisted suicide, and you can tell us how Black Mirror it is for yourself.
What company was it for again?
I don't know what company it was for, but here it is. There we go. Okay, and so that was pretty insane to watch, right?
Yeah, I watched it this morning as well when you sent it to me, because I was actually in disbelief that this is a thing. Also, I'll be honest with you, I don't watch the news. I don't watch television much.
You're already like 5 steps ahead of the game.
Because I remember in first year university, I realized we're just being bombarded with information that feeds, again, that negative light of life sucks. Everything is really negative. And so, yeah, I was shocked that this is a thing.
So now we're having people who have mental health issues who are suffering from, so instead of our system being able to find a way, so during the evil time of the lockdowns and stuff, we had a mass firing of healthcare professionals. Mm-hmm. So now we don't really have as many. And the answer is, well, since we don't have the resources, and since, we're like, as a country, our government's giving money to all these crazy other causes, we don't have the money. So now we're going to make it very easy for you to, like, are you depressed? Are you like, do you have hearing loss? Do you have like arthritis? Is it like, you can literally write anything down, and a doctor doesn't even need to give you the euthanasia. It could be an actual nurse, like, it doesn't, or another healthcare practitioner. Like, a doctor doesn't have to be the one to do it.
Wow, I honestly have so many questions. Obviously, this is very surface level. Like, I haven't done research or tapped into this.
So just looking at that, we can see where society is headed, and we need to draw the line, because, most people, because we're empathetic people, we would go, okay, if someone's terminally ill and they're suffering, they're sitting in a hospital bed, they don't have family, they've been there for 8 weeks. It's actually putting a burden on they will pass away. They do give their full consent. Your heart says, okay, like, that's someone who's really deeply suffering. You're not going to deny that person. Right. So we want to be good, but we need to be very careful about that line. And if we don't start to look at that line soon, we're going to go exactly where you're saying, which is, a place where we're very devoid of that feeling of grass underneath our feet. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of us are lacking that, and it's hard to even give yourself the space to do that if you're always so caught up in everything that comes with, I don't know, adulting and living in the kind of society that we live in, especially, when the cost of living is up. And I don't know, there's so many things, and I feel like it might lead to a society with very, very down people, with low vibrations, low frequencies, and that alone is an issue. But the other issue is that, how do we help these people? How do we support these people?
The solution is that on an individual level, we seek out the good and hope and faith and all this other stuff. The other thing is nervous system things, doing the things like getting out in nature. The other thing is therapy. The other thing is friends. And the other thing is not isolating yourself. Finding a way to if you know people that are suffering through this, to be the one to reach out to them and to help them do these things,
Yeah, there's a lot.
So we're going to wrap this episode up, and we just want to leave it on that good note, which is that there are resources, especially, gosh, if you are considering ending your life, please reach out to someone. The Talk Suicide Canada hotline is 1-833-456-4566. Reach out to someone, to a friend, to that hotline, anyone, really, because you're valuable and you're worth it, and we want you here and we love you.
I love you.
I love you.
That's so sweet. Thank you for tuning in. We have an incredible guest joining us for our last episode of the year. So we won't see you guys until the new year. Wishing everyone a very happy holidays for whatever it is that you celebrate. And I hope that your holiday season is full of love, happiness, joy, warmth, and tell the people that are close to you, you love them, show them how much you love them, and see you in the new year.